Welcome to today's episode of Money Talk with Skylar Fleming. Joining me right after this introduction is Andy, the CEO of Crowd Health. We're going to be talking about health insurance and his new way that his company is taking on paying for medical bills. Why is healthcare so expensive? There's a lot of great insights that are going to come from today's interview, so make sure you stay tuned. The money talking points for today's episode are: what area of your financial life could use a new system or process? And 2, what do you think of health insurance? So with those money talking points in mind, let's get right into today's episode. You know, we don't talk about money enough. It's a topic that gets ignored for some reason, even though it plays a role in everyone's day-to-day life. This issue is what brought Money Talk with Skylar Fleming to reality. I know you're probably busy and don't have time to research and learn about all the things that go into personal finance, but that's where this podcast, Money Talk with Skylar Fleming, comes into play. I'm your host, Skylar Fleming. I'm here to do the research and learn about all the things that go into personal finance. The goal is to simply get us talking about money. So let's get talking. Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's interview. I have Andy here from Crowd Health, and we're going to be talking all about Crowd Health, talking about insurance, talking about paying for medical bills. Andy, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, sure. I'll give you a little bit of background, a little bit of context for Crowd Health. I think that might be helpful for the audience. I founded a healthcare company a few years ago and ended up selling that to a private equity firm. And came off of that and didn't have health insurance. Like many of us, I got my health insurance through my employer. And so I went to healthcare.gov, got a plan. I think it was $1,200 for me, my wife, and my 2 girls. And I kind of joke it worked until I had to use it. My little one, who was 1 at the time, was having recurring ear infections. And so we went to the ear, nose, and throat doctor, who said she has a hole in her eardrum. So we went to the local hospital, got that fixed, got tubes in her ears. It was a 15-minute procedure, got the bill, and it was $8,000. I was like, wow, $8,000 for 15 minutes. And, I was like, okay, well, this is what health insurance is for. Like, that's the whole point. I have health insurance. And little did I know, a few weeks later, I was going to get another note in the mail that said that my insurance company thought it was, or deemed it medically unnecessary. And so they weren't going to pay the bill. And so, after 3 rounds of dispute resolutions, they still wouldn't pay for it. And so I had to stroke an $8,000 check to the local hospital. And as a result of that, I called the hospital and I said, look, the insurance plan. And I said, look, if you're not going to pay my bills, I'm not going to pay your bills. And so I quit. And so me and my family have been uninsured for the last something like 3 or 3.5 years. And started over that time building some tools to allow us to operate outside of the legacy health insurance industry. And as a result of that, the tools, kind of the culmination of those tools, was a new company called Crowd Health that I founded a couple years ago to help people who are frustrated with the health insurance system to operate viably outside of health insurance. And so that's a little bit of my background, a little bit of the birth story of Crowd Health. But we've been around for 2 years. We've signed up about 5,000 folks and have helped them navigate everything from pediatrician visits to cancer to NICU babies to brain hemorrhages, and have effectively done that thus far. So it's a little bit of background on me and the company.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I had read about your story before this interview, and I thought that was crazy. I've heard many stories. My wife is in the medical field, and she's told me a story about clinics that she's worked at the past where the doctor would clearly say, we need to fix this. And then the insurance would come back and say, nope, that's not. It's like, why? They're not the medical provider. It's crazy to me, some of those stories.
Yeah.
But,
in essence, what has happened is, 50 years ago, in 1970s, the insurance companies have kind of stuck themselves in between us and our doctor. And so it's no longer a decision between us and our doctor. It's really the decision of the insurance company, what medical procedures we can or cannot get. And so what we're saying is, no, let's rip out that middleman. Let's make the relationship truly be between you and your doctor. And not only can you get better care, it's way less expensive. Because if you pay in cash at the doctor's office, you're getting substantially better rates than what health insurance plans are getting. And so that's kind of the key to how we work, is we enable people to pay in cash. And therefore, I think we're getting something between 40 and 50%, or excuse me, our members are getting somewhere between 40 and 50% better prices than health insurance plans for most of these procedures.
Awesome. Yeah, that was one of the things that popped into my mind as I was just thinking through these programs like Crowd Health, is like, where did because there's always like your insurance will get you discounts or whatever that whole thing is about. So hearing that for me is really like, I guess, calming on one of my main questions around it. But I know some people are going to be like, health insurance, how do you go without health insurance? It's such a pain and a headache, but it feels like one of those necessary evils. Is it possible to go without health insurance at all?
Yeah, well, I mean, me and my family have done it for 3.5 years. We save about $10,000 a year, and we've had some decent, medical things, but nothing huge. But like I said, we've signed up almost 5,000 folks. They've had really big health expenses, like I said, cancers and brain hemorrhages and things like that. I think the key component here is that health insurance inflates healthcare prices, and so healthcare is not that expensive if you pay in cash. So, for example, something that, many people get in their 40s, 50s, 60s is a colonoscopy, for example. I have a family history, and so I have to get one, my insurance plan, if I was on insurance, that I have to get one every somewhere between 5 and 10 years, depending upon what insurance plan is. I get one every 3 years, because what happens is if I go and I pay in cash, it's about $800 for a colonoscopy. Your health insurance plan is paying somewhere between $2,500 and $4,000 for a colonoscopy. So I'm getting, somewhere between 60 and 75, maybe even 80% better prices paying in cash than my health insurance company is paying. And so why is that? The doctors don't have to deal with the administrative headache of having health insurance plans. I was talking to a doctor the other day on a podcast. He had 3 billing people for every doctor. So that's all big, and they're all used to pay, for health insurance, or get paid by health insurance. And then he has to wait 3 or 4 months to get paid. And he spends about 30% of his time on the phone with health insurance plans to get all these medical procedures. And so if I can go in cash and pay with a credit card, the doctor eliminates all of that administrative headache, and therefore can give me way better prices than he can give, or he or she can give health insurance plans.
Yeah, and that's fascinating to me. I think, like you said, the doctor's taken 3 to 4 months to get paid by insurance. It takes forever. It reduces transparency in the health system. Things are just costing more because, like you said, fees, administrative tasks, paying people to manage all that. The healthcare system just in general looks different because of insurance, I would say. So what my wife and I commonly talk about is that there's so much around it that it causes other things to be unknown to people. It's like you never see a medical bill and understand it because it just goes to the insurance and then magic happens. Like, you don't really understand what you're paying for, and that can be like really confusing, really concerning. Like, people just don't know what's going on in the health system. Yeah. And then there's all the issues, like you said.
For sure. And, it's an interesting question, because people are saying, can you survive without health insurance? I turn it on its head and I say, how do you survive with health insurance? Because here's the deal. 200,000 families who had health insurance last year went bankrupt due to a health event. So they have health insurance and they're still going bankrupt. And so why is that? One is most people don't know their deductible. If you're getting off the healthcare exchange, the Affordable Care Act exchange, you probably have somewhere, if you have a family of 4, between an $8,000 and a $15,000 deductible, which means you're paying the first $8,000 to $15,000 of your medical bills, on top of paying premiums that are probably somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500. So wickedly expensive. That's almost $30,000 you'll pay in healthcare expenses a year before the health insurance plan will pay a dime. The second is 48 million claims last year were denied for Affordable Care Act plans. 48 million. So what happens when you have something like mine where you have an $8,000 bill and you can't pay it, which has happened to, millions, tens of millions of people. You have one of two choices. Like, you can just not pay it, or they'll put you into bankruptcy, right? And so that's the big concerning thing here, is that even though people have health insurance, they're still going into, financial distress. And that's where I'm like, this system just doesn't make sense if you're paying that much money and still putting you in financial distress.
Yeah, I like the repositioning, or new perspective to say, how do you live with it? Because I know my sister has friends that have medical issues, and they're like, I can't go to don't call an ambulance because I can't afford it. Like those sort of things. Like that's crazy to me. Like we've been talking to it up to this point, and I think you could pull them out of our conversation, but maybe to highlight specifically, what are some flaws that our health insurance system can cause?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, people ask me, like, why is health insurance, or why is healthcare prices so high? And I said, it's not that difficult to understand. One is you have the buyer of healthcare services, which is big hospital systems most of the time. And they want the price to go up. They want to get paid as much as possible. And that's understandable. That's free market economics. The problem comes is that you have the buyer, that was the seller of healthcare expenses, right? I'm selling my services to somebody. The buyer of healthcare services are these health plans. And little do people know is health plans also have the incentive for prices to go up. Because in the Affordable Care Act, what it said is that you can only have 15% of the premium be for profit, administrative costs or profit. So if we use easy math here, and you have $1,000 premium, the health insurance plan can only make $150. Okay, so these are for-profit entities. They want their profits to go up. So how do you make $165? Well, your premium has to go from $1,000 to $1,100 for you to make more money. And so the health plans actually have an incentive for prices to go up. So if you have the buyer of healthcare services, the health plans, and the sellers of healthcare services, the hospital systems, both wanting the prices to go up, guess what? The prices are going up, right? That doesn't take a PhD in economics. And so that's the underlying perverse incentives within the healthcare system. And the health insurance system companies are telling you, I'm on your team. I'm negotiating really good rates for you. But in fact, they actually have an incentive for the prices to go up. And so, that's why these prices go up. The other thing, too, is these hospital systems are consolidating. And so there's only usually 2 or 3, hospital systems within a city. The health insurance plans have to have both of those big hospital systems. I'm in Austin, Texas. They have to have Ascension. They have to have St. David's. If they don't, then nobody's going to pick their plan. So there's a duopoly within the hospital systems too, that, the hospital system's like, look, we don't have to negotiate with you. We're going to, just let the prices continue to rise. And the hospital and the insurance plans are like, great, okay, we'll do that.
Yeah, they're fine with it.
Yeah. So that's the underlying perverse incentives that's really driving these higher prices.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's because you're exposing the market to a double seller kind of thing. Like you were saying, like you have one that can control the prices because that's how the market works. But then you have this extra middleman that also, like you said, is incentivized for the prices to go up. But that's really fascinating. That's interesting. I didn't know that aspect of it. I know one of the things I've read from you is that HSAs are something that you feel should be more accessible. Can you maybe touch on the HSA a little bit?
Yeah, the HSA, basically what it is, it's a tax-exempt contribution to a fund that you can then use for your healthcare expenses. So it's pre-tax. And the challenge with these HSAs is that they have to be coupled with a high deductible health plan. So you have to have a high deductible health plan to be able to have an HSA. What we're trying to do is get legislators to think about this and say, hey, why does it need to be coupled with a high deductible health plan? Why not allow it to be used for anybody, whether you have a health plan or you don't have a health plan? Let's make those accessible to everybody because, you're giving people who have an insurance kind of a leg up on those who don't. So, and we're one of the few out there that are being kind of contrarian and controversial and saying we think more people should be uninsured than insured. Everybody else is saying, we have all these people who are uninsured. Oh my gosh. I was like, no. Like people being uninsured is a good thing. And in fact, if in my utopian world, nobody would have insurance. And everybody would have free market kind of economics to really negotiate their health prices. And we can, everybody who's listening, I'm assuming, is being like, okay, well, what about the big one? How do I get, how do I pay for cancer? And we can talk about the mechanics of how Crowd Health works if you want to. But, I think it's bringing free market economics into a system that does not have any, push on prices is key to getting our healthcare system in order.
Yeah, I think, as I was thinking through this idea of crowd health and how it could work and how it helps, like you said, it's better for people to be uninsured. I think that's just because it provides opportunity. You're not locked into a system that, like you've said, is just trying to drive prices up. And like everyone wants their profit on the back end of the medical system.
A lot of middlemen.
So if we're getting out of that and getting out of that insured area, like there's a bunch of opportunity. I know my wife's in the PA program at the University of Utah. So she volunteers at a lot of these places where people don't have health insurance. But like you said, like there's probably an opportunity for them to, like, health insurance is probably just going to be confusing, overwhelming, and expensive for these people who like don't have any other options. So they have to rely on like volunteer events and things like that. But if we could like maybe restructure the health system in a little bit, maybe without all those middlemen, there's just more opportunity for them to say, yeah, I don't want to pay that much for because we actually know the costs and things like that. It's just really interesting, like the adjustments that the health insurance system has to go through when you start taking out those middlemen and all the like cash grabbers throughout the
100%.
Process.
100%.
But I do want to dive into the specifics of crowd health and maybe talk a little bit about how it works, because I've heard about these programs before. There's different ones out there. I actually recently have heard about crowd health on a couple other podcasts. So your name's getting out there, which is awesome. So what is crowd health? How does it work? How is it cost effective for people to join?
Yeah, so we think it's super cost effective. And in fact, what we're trying to do is, I kind of joke, it's back to the future a little bit. Back for over the last couple hundred years, typically when somebody's gotten hurt in your community, the other community members have gathered around them to help them. Whether it be, somebody gets hurt and can't plant the seeds or, in their field, the community would gather around them to ensure that they don't miss that period of time to do that. Or, I mentioned earlier, in the 1970s, the government and health insurance companies have come in between us and said, no, you're no longer responsible for your neighbor. Let me, the government or the health insurance plan, be responsible for them. And so we're bringing back a digital community. Whereas if Skylar were to have a significant health event, what we would do is we would go to a group of people in the community and say, hey, Skylar, broke his arm or whatever. And so it was $5,000. And so we would go to 50 people in the community and we'd say, hey, would you help out Skylar by sending him $100? And so that's a peer-to-peer transaction that allows people to help directly somebody else in the community. So the way this actually works is Crowd Health has it's 2 invoices per month. The first is $50. That goes to us. That pays our bills. Totally transparent. That's the only way we make money. So we have no incentive for your prices to go up. The second is we'll come and ask you for, if you're single and under 55, $125, up to $125 to help somebody else in the community with their health event. And if you say yes, then money goes directly from your account to their account so that they then have enough money in the bank to pay for their $5,000 broken arm or their $100,000 brain hemorrhage or whatever it may be. And so we've been doing this for 2 years. I think we're on bill 6,000 and something. Everyone has gotten funded. 98.7% of the time we ask people will say yes, that they will help others in the community. And you will know exactly where your money is going. So, we had one a few months ago where somebody, actually this was probably 9 or 12 months ago, somebody in Tennessee, a 19-year-old girl, had her fingers chopped off in a boating accident. We asked Skylar and Andy and John and James and Jennifer to help that person, that 19-year-old in Tennessee. So your money is going directly to her. Crowd Health is not getting in the middle of that. So you're sending money directly to another human being as opposed to sending it to a big insurance corporation that then gets to decide. So we say, fund humans, not health insurance. And that's really what we're about is to kind of connect people together in this community. And it's been super effective thus far. So it's up to $125 a month of crowdfunding for if you're under 55. It's $250 if you're over 55. It's $375 if you're a family. So that's the max that we will ask you in any 1 month. And in fact,
That's
in
really
July, we asked singles for $60, people over 55 for $120, and we asked families for $180. So that's the max we'll ask you, is what the numbers I gave you previously. But we only ask you for however much is needed in this month. So it's a pretty cool system, totally different than your health insurance system or even health shares. Some of the people have heard of health shares. We're totally different from that as well.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yeah. Because I think like insurance, you're paying your premiums. It's going to this big company, like you mentioned. And then they're telling people, no, you can't actually get that health coverage that your insurance is supposed to cover. Like they're telling people, no, we're not actually going to pay for that. And you don't know where your money's going. It's just going into the pocket or the whatever of
pot.
this. It's just going into this big pot that's not being spent or not being used properly. But I like how your perspective is saying it's going straight to someone. You can tell those sort of things. You can tell where it's going and things like that. That's really interesting, because if someone goes and looks at their health insurance plan right now through their work or wherever, you're probably seeing that your premiums are definitely up in those numbers, but it's all coming out automatically. So maybe you're not even thinking about it. So if you start thinking about it, you can see how a system like Crowd Health or some other way to do health insurance might be really beneficial to you. Because if you say, oh, we're spending that amount of money anyways on health insurance that isn't doing what we need it to. So I think it's worth a shot. Like, it's really interesting to me. I've thought about it for my wife and I, because we're still on the young side. So we're working with our parents' health insurance, which is fine right now. But like, as we get older and things like that, like these sort of new tools in the health insurance space and in the healthcare space are just fascinating to me, because the system, I think everyone agrees, needs some sort of change. Like it needs something to fix it, something to do differently. So things coming about to allow us to do things differently, I think is just awesome.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it. And we just need people, like you, as you kind of get off your parents and others, to really invest in things that are alternatives. I mean, if we really want to change the healthcare system, it's okay to moan and groan and whine about it, right? But it's like, okay, let's do some things that to help this system. And what I'm telling people is, look, ditch health insurance. We don't think health insurance is good for us. It's not good for our kids. It's not good for our kids' kids. And so ditch health insurance. 25% of our people have had the opportunity to get in health insurance through their employer and have said no, have opted out, and have joined Crowd Health because they think that, this market-driven approach to healthcare is the only way that we're gonna fix healthcare. The other thing, real quick thing, I know we're running out of time here, but one other quick thing about Crowd Health is, for medical events, we ask you to pay the first $500 of any health event. So if you have cancer, $500. If you break your arm, $500. If you go to the ER, $500. And so a cancer event might be, 50 doctor visits. That's all one event. You're paying $500 for that. There's one exception, which is yearly wellness visits. So you can go to a primary care, OBGYN, pediatrician, vision, or dental once a year, and that's fully fundable by the community, up to $300. So that's the one other kind of exception that's a little bit different, and I want to make sure that your audience knew how that worked. But in essence, what we're trying to do is create this environment of people being well, taking care of their health, because it's one thing to change the prices and to get better pricing. It's another thing to have 30 or 40 years worth of behavior change that leads to people not having chronic conditions. And that's even more important to me, that, folks like me and you in 30, 40, 50 years can be in the backyard playing football or Frisbee or whatever with our grandkids. Like, that's ultimately what our mission is that you live happier, healthier lives. And by paying in cash, you can do that. I can go get a colonoscopy whenever I want to. We got a woman the other day, a mammogram for $124. The healthcare is not expensive if you pay in cash, and therefore you can actually consume more of it to do more preventative stuff if you pay in cash, and we think that's really important.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me. That's such a nice approach. I like the I like the new approach of take care of your health. Let's make it cheaper for people so they can afford to take care of their health. But also, like, there's a lot of things you can do on the front end to help your health do better, like you said, so that you're able to be outside with grandkids and great grandkids. And maybe that's from a balance of living a healthier life because you can get to the doctor more, and maybe you recognize something easier because you're not afraid to go to the doctor for the bill that's going to come in the mail. So that's really interesting. I really like this. I really like this idea. I like what you're saying that Crowd Health can do to help. How can people, if they're interested in Crowd Health or want to learn more, how can they either reach out to your company or learn more information?
Yeah, we're on all the social media platforms. So, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. It's all of them are at Join Crowd Health. So go check us out there. If you want to, sign up or learn more, joincrowdhealth.com is our website. You can go, you can get the details, you can schedule a call with one of our advisors to walk you through any of your questions if you have them. So we'd love for folks to entertain, taking a look at us because we think we can offer something that your health insurance plans can't.
Awesome. Yeah, my whole premise around my podcast is to get us talking about these financial subjects just so we can learn and understand new ideas. And often I talk about that in the form of maybe learning a new debt payoff strategy or learning a new way to budget. But I think learning a new way to do healthcare and how to pay for healthcare is something that could completely change someone's financial situation. So I think that this conversation has been perfect for what the whole money talk idea is about. So thank you, Andy, so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure all of our listeners will find value from this conversation.
Thanks, Skylar.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Money Talk with Skylar Fleming. And thank you so much to Andy for coming on today's episode and talking to me about Crowd Health. It was a really insightful conversation for me, and I hope you took a lot away from it as well. There's some great stories behind why he started Crowd Health. He was just sick of the medical system and the health insurance system not paying his bills, so he said he wasn't going to pay their bills. If health insurance is such a pain, maybe we should go away from it. Maybe do some research on your own, of course. Don't just take the exact thing you hear on this podcast and run with it. Do a little bit more research on your own. There's some flaws that the health insurance system has caused in our medical system, so make sure you consider those. And if you ever have someone who is confused or frustrated with the health insurance system, share today's episode with them and share it with a friend, and then go and have a money talk about some new system that you can implement in your financial life, or maybe this new look on health insurance. And of course, please give this podcast a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening on. It helps other people find it, as well as sharing it with a friend. But thank you for listening to today's episode of Money Talk with Skylar Fleming. I'm your host, Skylar Fleming. Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Money Talk with Skylar Fleming. This show is provided for informational and entertainment purposes and may not be specific to your unique situation. Please be sure to do additional research before making any financial decisions.